Good afternoon. My name is Raivo Vare. I'm a member of the board of the Estonian Council of Foreign Relations, and I have great privilege to accommodate today for the fire chat of traditional Lennart Meri Conference, retired General Ben Hodges, who was, among many other things and services, he made also the chief commander of US forces in Europe, and have served in, basically, as I've seen in your bio, that in very hotspots of different kind in the world. And we will start to talk about issues which are one way or another related to the military.
Okay. Thank you for the privilege, by the way.
Thank you. Let's start with questions. Ben, please tell us what is by your assessment, the current stage of the biggest war in Europe after 1945?
I think that, of course, if you're a Ukrainian soldier in the trenches around Kharkiv or in eastern Ukraine, it's bad. I mean, you're getting pounded with the Russian artillery and rockets, and you don't have enough ammunition. But if you can step away from the map a little bit, I think it's important to keep in mind that after 10 years, with Russia having every advantage, they still control less than 20% of Ukraine. They've lost 500,000 soldiers. A third of their Black Sea fleet is underwater. The rest of it is moving. The Navy is no longer a factor, basically. The Russian Air Force, which had huge advantages, failed. Task number one was get air superiority. They have failed task number two, which is to interdict the lines of communication coming from Poland, bringing the equipment and ammunition into Ukraine. So despite all those advantages, the best they can do, I mean, almost 3 months after Avdiivka fell, which people in Munich were like, oh my God, Avdiivka fell. That's as far east in Ukraine as you can get. And the Russians have barely moved beyond Avdiivka or Bakhmut. So I'm not impressed with Russia's ability to exploit their advantage. And keep in mind that the U.S. failed to deliver any ammunition for the last 6 months, and also Europe failed to step up and fill that gap, and still Russia is where they are. Now, there's a lot of fighting going on out on the north side of Kharkiv. I'm not convinced, I could be wrong, I'm not convinced that Russia has the ability to even capture Kharkiv. I'm not convinced that that's the objective. I think, I guess I'll stop after this. There's too much doom and gloom. Oh my God, it's horrible for Ukraine, and they have to negotiate. We have not even tried yet. We, the West, we haven't even tried to help Ukraine win. My president has not said our objective is that Ukraine wins this war because it's in our interest. The German Bundeskanzler has not said that. So we're not using all the tools we have. We don't have the sense of urgency that we need. So that's a longer answer.
Yeah, but it's actually exactly about spotting the major problem from my perspective, for example, that for any military activity and campaign, you need an aim. You need a clearly defined aim. And what we are witnessing right now is what we are talking about in majority, at least in these main capital cities already partly mentioned by you. We are talking about Ukraine not losing the war. We are not talking about Ukraine winning and Russia losing the war. And this is a big difference. On the other hand, Russia hasn't been ever, I think you agree with me, a kind of showing efficiency in whatever actions they have taken, but they have advantage of resources. One way or another, they have utilized this one way or another. And for that reason, my question will continue with assessment from your side on this war of attrition, which is launched by Russians right now, and this window of opportunity they try to utilize before this aid, which was withheld for a while, will arrive. Do you believe that they can afford it, and how long it can happen, or what shall be done in case that we are witnessing right now?
Well, that's I think, the perfect question. I mean, how long can Russia keep doing what they're doing with over 1,000 soldiers a day being killed in the current operations? 1,000 per day. Clearly, the Kremlin does not care about how many people
They
are
recruit
killed.
another 300,000.
But where do they get them from? Out in the hinterland. There's very few funerals happening in Moscow and St. Petersburg. So the Russian public, first of all, that you won't see Russians in the streets the way you see in Tbilisi and Georgia, or that we have seen for a brief period of time in Belarus, in Minsk. That's not going to happen in Russia. I mean, the interior security internal security is too strong, and plus, I don't think it's in the Russian sort of DNA to take to the streets anymore. But I don't think that they can keep doing this forever. If we got serious and made the sanctions, if we enforced the sanctions that are already laid out, if we enforce them, then I think you would see a different impact. If we enabled and encouraged Ukraine to keep going after Russian oil and gas infrastructure, then I think Russian people would begin to actually start to feel it. If we did not allow these ghost fleet ships to take oil out of Russia to be sold, then I think Russia would begin to feel it. But it's not the 300 million of the Soviet Union anymore. It's, their population, I think, is around 140 million, not necessarily terribly healthy. So it's not endless. The key is when Putin realizes that we're not going to quit. If he heard my president say, Ukraine's going to win this war, we're going to make sure that Ukraine wins this war, then I think they would have to do some real recalculation in the Kremlin.
So actually what we are thinking when we are talking about this main aim, we are thinking about the massive and very effective support and aid which will be provided to Ukrainians in the amounts which will be sufficient enough to achieve the aim.
Yeah, the way that Ukraine can neutralize or defeat the Russian advantage of mass, of big numbers, is with precision. Large mass armies require a lot of logistics, and because these are not well-trained soldiers, they need headquarters that can control everything. And the Russian tactic is massed artillery to pound, and then you overwhelm the defenders with Russian corpses. I mean, so if you can take out headquarters, artillery, and logistics, then it doesn't matter how many untrained infantry are wandering around out there on the steppes. So that's why it was so important that the United States finally made the decision to allow ATACMS, the 300-kilometer range weapon, because that can reach almost every square meter of Russian-occupied Ukraine. This is why it's important that Germany should provide Taurus, 500-kilometer range. Then every single square meter of all of Russian-occupied Ukraine can be hit. And on the modern battlefield, there's nowhere to hide. I mean, these headquarters and big piles of artillery ammunition, there's nowhere to hide. Now, Ukraine, if they can hit it, they're already showing this in Crimea. They're making Crimea uninhabitable or untenable for the Russian Navy, the Russian Air Force, Russian logistics. That's long-range precision weapons. That's going to be the key in terms of helping Ukraine neutralize or defeat the Russian advantage of mass.
So basically, it's true that logistics and economy are the main factors to provide in case of the military conflict.
I think 2024, this year, is a year of industrial competition. The aid package is enough to help Ukraine buy some time this year, not to win the war, but at least buy some time this year, so they can stabilize the front, they can improve or grow the size of their own army, but also build up Ukrainian defense industry, and for the West to finally get a sense of urgency about production of ammunition. So I think we'll be in a much better situation. Ukraine will be in a better situation by the end of this year if we get serious about industrial competition. Meanwhile, Russia, of course, is openly receiving things from China now, so that's got to be stopped. They get ammunition from North Korea, that's got to be stopped somehow, and then they get drones from Iran. So we've got to figure out how to cut that off.
And this is the grounds for optimism you have expressed several times, that actually getting back not even Donbass but Crimea, which is some kind of symbol also of, any respect, it is possible. It is possible and it is achievable.
Yes, of course it'll happen in stages. Making it untenable is the first step, which is what they're doing now. And eventually they're going to isolate it by, I think the Ukrainians, when they're ready, they've already figured out how they're going to destroy that big bridge. And if they have enough precision weapons, they will also cut the railroad that the Russians have just finished, so that Crimea cannot be reached. And very cleverly, as they've gone about destroying Russian Navy ships, they've been destroying the LSTs, which are the large vessels that are designed to carry armored vehicles or logistics. So no bridge, no LSTs, no railroad. So that's step 2, is the isolation. And then when they're ready and they have the capability, then you'll see Ukrainian troops re-entering Crimea.
In the conference, Lennart Meri conference, there is a lot of talks about the strategical autonomy and future related to the possibility that in US will take place some changes after the autumn elections. So basically the question is that what is your assessment, or how you envisage how we will proceed in case that if certain president will take the office?
I just came back this week from 2 days in Washington, D.C., specifically for the purpose of trying to understand what are the implications for Europe and for Germany and for NATO if Mr. Trump is reelected to be for another presidential term. I think 3 main things. First of all, and by the way, I hope he's not. I hope he is not elected. But if he is, then he is. And so other countries should be practical and figure out, okay, if Trump is a president again, that's who you got to deal with. And think about how you want to do that, what's best for your country or your organization if there's a Trump administration, and who will be in it. I think this time, I'm more convinced now that he's not an isolationist. Actually, the opposite. He's a business person. He wants to make deals. And
best possible from his point of view.
From his point of view. And he believes in his core, I disagree with it, but I heard this enough now to understanding better, that he believes America has gotten a bad deal, that people don't appreciate all the things that the United States did, and that's why he focuses so much on something tangible like defense spending. That's for him is the bad deal. So especially when wealthy European countries are not doing it, but they're benefiting from security provided by the United States. Now, I think this is incredibly short-sighted because we benefit from having all of our allies in Europe. We benefit from the economic prosperity of Europe because Europe is America's biggest trading partner, and we benefit because we have air bases, Navy bases, Army bases, training facilities all over Europe. And the United States does not have enough capacity to do what we have to do. We need allies, and all of our best and most reliable allies are in Europe, as well as Canada, Australia, South Korea, Japan. So I think he probably gets that. And while he will continue to pound away on NATO, and by the way, they're going to be talking 3% now, not 2% is going to be like prehistoric.
Although there are some countries not yet even reaching this 2%.
At least 10 are not there yet. It will not be there at the Washington summit, and it's going to be very embarrassing for them, and they're going to get called out. And if there's a President Trump again, he will resume that. But that doesn't mean he's going to leave NATO. The Trump administration will be focused very, very strongly on China. My concern is that he says, I don't care about Europe. We got to focus on China. Europe, take care of yourself. Again, I think that would be short-sighted. But if he does that, the danger for Europe does not go away. In fact, it increases. So this is where European leaders need to get serious about the defense. There will always be U.S. presence here. There will always be U.S. participation in what's going on. And frankly, most of what we have in Europe is not something that we would transfer to the Indo-Pacific region. So it's not like we've had to make a big choice. There's hardly any ships here. So I don't see a lot of stuff leaving. I'm just saying European countries have to do what they have always said they would do and acknowledge that they need to do what Estonia does. They need to do what Poland does and get serious about defense, like Finland does.
So the best guarantee is actually that we will do what we do or what we have promised or what we want, and just ask other colleagues to follow, but otherwise we will witness what President Trump once already said, that if you do not pay, you do not get protection.
Yeah.
So is it correct?
I think although I don't like it, but enough people told me while I was in D.C., said, look, you got to separate what he says. This is campaign stuff. He's throwing red meat to the mob in the Coliseum there, okay? Look at what he does. Now, I hate that because I don't think that's good statesman-like strategic leadership, because it also could send a wrong signal to the Kremlin that they would misinterpret. That's the dangerous part. But I don't believe that serious Americans, including the Congress, by the way, don't forget the Congress is a separate branch of the government, checks and balances. Most members of Congress understand what this is about. There's a few loud ones out there that don't, but most do get it. And so I'm a little bit more confident that they will be a little bit more sober about Europe. But if Ukraine fails, it will be because the United States and Germany and some other European countries let it happen. There's no reason Russia should win this war, except that we turn our back or fail to do it. And so, of course, what happens if Ukraine fails, Russia will absorb tens of thousands of Ukrainian troops, and the army will get bigger. And they've already said they're going to keep going. And so Poland, our Polish allies, they're not going to sit behind the Vistula River and hope that Russia stops. I think they will move into Western Ukraine. Romania has said they will protect Moldova. So they're not going to sit back behind the Prut River. They will. So I think the danger, and of course there will be millions of Ukrainian refugees heading into Poland and Germany.
And nobody wants it. But it also brings me to the almost last question about the guarantees for if we have NATO here, it's one thing. But if we have Ukraine, let's say, even winning the war, but still not being accepted to NATO, what will be the setup for the guarantee, for security guarantees for
there is
Ukraine?
No guarantee except NATO membership. I mean, that's the cold, hard truth. There's all kinds of agreements. Estonia has an agreement with Ukraine. Multiple countries have security agreements. That's not a guarantee. That's not a treaty. So I think we should be honest about what this means. The U.S. still does not have an agreement, a formal agreement yet, even though we're providing billions of dollars of aid and different things. I think the only guarantee will be having NATO membership with U.S., Estonian, Polish, German soldiers in Ukraine, just like we have NATO troops in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland now, and in Romania. I think that's the only guarantee. But the best thing, of course, is I believe if we should not be scared of success. We should not be scared of defeating Russia, of Russia failing. We should plan for it. I don't advocate going in directly to attempt regime change. That never works out the way you want it to. We've tried it several times in other places and it always turns out bad. It should happen organically inside Russia. But that could be one of the outcomes of Ukraine kicking Russia out of Ukraine, including all of Ukraine. That's Crimea as well. And if that leads to some of the oligarchs being unhappy with Putin because he's ruined their fortunes, or people finally do take the streets, or Putin finally decides, okay, maybe time.
It's a trigger. It's a kind of trigger
I
which
should
might
retire
trigger
to
a lot of
Sochi.
process.
Yeah, it could be that trigger. So I think we should plan for it. You know, what happens to all the nuclear weapons? And by the way, remember, 1989 was not chaos. I mean, nobody lost control of nuclear weapons. We had some very positive outcomes with the breakup of the Soviet Union, that finally Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania were able to regain their independence. But I mean, it was not, especially the nuclear weapons. I think that's what people worry about the most. But because we were all surprised, I have not met a single person, by the way, that told me in 1988 they predicted that the Soviet Union was going to collapse the next year. Nobody has said that. We were not prepared to think about, opportunities, risks, dangers. It just happened. And we had some very bad outcomes as well. I think we should be anticipating the breakup of Russia, and it's a good thing. We should not be scared of it.
Right. And last question, taking account that your long-time successful service in hotspots, as I've mentioned at the beginning, including Middle East and Afghanistan, and if we look at the map, we can see that actually even if we skip this war in Ukraine, we can see that this region is full of conflicts, which have happened already, which have been developing, evolving all the time, and in spite of the outcome of this war in Ukraine, still will be there, and potential conflicts as well. So, what is your reading of the region? You've seen it from inside in the very moment of battle, but even now.
Raivo, thank you for that question, because it really is important. If you can step back from the heat of Ukraine and look at the world, in my mind, Russia's war against Ukraine, Iran's support of their war against Israel, direct and through their proxies, the Houthis, Hamas, and Hezbollah, North Korea, threatening Japan and South Korea all the time, plus providing ammunition to Russia, and then China. I look at them all as parts of one big strategic challenge. And if we look at it that way, like they're not separate fires that need to be put out, they're all part of the same fire, then how do you deal with that? That would, number one, that would cause you to think differently about the scale of forces and industrial capacity that you need. We have to be prepared to fight Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. How much ammunition do we need? How many Patriot air defense systems do you need? How many commercial ships do you need? How many ... And what alliances do you have to have? All right, so to do this. And then you think, okay, who of those bad guys, who helps who? Who is Russia's most reliable ally? It's Iran, and vice versa. So if Russia is defeated, Iran becomes isolated. Nobody else is going to help Iran. And if Russia is defeated, the Chinese will say, oh, they're serious. The West is serious about defending the so-called international rules-based order, the UN Charter, freedom of navigation, respect for sovereignty, respect for international agreement. The West really is serious about it. We do have the industrial capacity, the political will, and the military capability to help Ukraine defeat Russia. I think that will be a powerful signal of deterrence to China. But if we're not even willing to do that here in Europe,
this will be the wrong signal.
It's a horrible signal, because it, frankly, from a strategic standpoint, is much easier here because of the geography, because of all the allies, the contiguous nations and logistics and all that. In the Pacific, no ally of ours touches another one. I mean, South Korea, Japan, Australia, the U.S., huge distances, and Taiwan is right there. So on my air map. I may have had my geography wrong, but that it's a much greater challenge. So we need to send a very clear signal that we are prepared to do whatever it takes. Not this nonsense of we're with you for as long as it takes. That's an empty, wasted phrase. Whatever it takes to win. Then I think things like what's happening in Israel and Iran's support for Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, I think that changes significantly. It's still going to be difficult. And until the Netanyahu government finally changes their approach, looking for, I mean, any commander wants a political context for what we're doing. There is almost no situation that's purely a military solution.
Always mixed with politics.
Yeah, I mean, what's the end state? And how do you get the necessary laws to mobilize, to do what you need to do? There has to be a political context. And I think even the Israeli Defense Force, they're in a difficult situation because destroy Hamas, Hamas is not a thing. Everybody in Hamas needs to burn in hell forever. There's no doubt about that. But the solution is going to require a lot more than just killing as many Hamas fighters as they can find.
So basically, war in Ukraine is in a sense also a trial for the future very much, and dependent on what will be the solution, which we will provide or will not, will be also the introduction to what might happen later on.
That's very well said. If we fail this test, it's going to be much, much more difficult elsewhere.
Thank you very much, Ben, for your time, for very interesting insight, and hopefully these negative issues which were slightly touched during our conversation, they won't happen, and we do all things right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the privilege, Raivo.